Welcome to Immigration Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: having immigrant engineers and physicians driving Ubers is a national disgrace. Family honors killed student as her murder becomes political. Foreign criminals face deportation under plans to free up prisons. CEO of Ford demands Red Bull resolution of investigation into team principal Christian Horner. China pledges further steps to make payment apps easier for foreigners to use. Having immigrant engineers and physicians driving Ubers is a national disgrace. The Globe and Mail. Canada must address the barriers preventing immigrants from fully contributing to the economy, according to Claudia Hepburn, CEO of Windmill Microlending. Hepburn argues that measures should be put in place to enable highly educated immigrants to work at their skill levels, as underemployment is a national disgrace. Ontario has already banned discriminatory Canadian work experience requirements in regulated professions, but more needs to be done to address the complexity of reaccreditation and financial barriers. Hepburn suggests providing affordable loans for immigrants to cover expenses related to reaccreditation, obtaining Canadian certificates, and acquiring necessary tools or vehicles to access employment. Family honors killed student as her murder becomes political. The Independent. The family of a murdered nursing student in Georgia have called for privacy as some Republicans attempt to link the student's death to President Joe Biden's immigration policies. Laken Riley was found dead on the University of Georgia campus on February 22. Jose Antonio Ibarra, who is not a U.S. citizen, has been charged with the murder and kidnapping of Ms. Riley. Conservative figures, including Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, have used the incident to push for stricter immigration laws. Foreign criminals face deportation under plans to free up prisons. Telegraph. Foreign shoplifters, thieves and drug dealers will be deported rather than prosecuted in a bid to free up prison spaces, according to the UK's Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. Lower-level foreign offenders will be expelled and banned from returning to the country under the plans. The move aims to reduce the 3,300 foreign prisoners on remand who have been charged but not yet convicted. They represent nearly a third of the 10,441 foreign offenders in jails in England and Wales, out of the total 88,000 prisoners. However, the plans could be frustrated by criminals who launch legal challenges against deportation. CEO of Ford demands Red Bull resolution of investigation into team principal Christian Horner. Associated Press. Ford CEO Jim Farley has written to Red Bull Racing calling for a resolution to an internal investigation into allegations of inappropriate behavior by Red Bull team principal Christian Horner. Ford is set to become Red Bull's engine supplier in 2026, and Farley expressed his frustration at the lack of progress in the investigation, calling for a fair and just resolution. Farley's letter is the most public comment from any of Red Bull's corporate partners on the investigation. Visa and Oracle, Red Bull's other major partners, have yet to comment. China pledges further steps to make payment apps easier for foreigners to use. South China Morning Post. China's State Council has approved measures to make it easier for foreigners and elderly people to use payment services. A number of legal barriers have made it difficult for foreigners to use payment apps due to the country's strict and complex foreign exchange controls. The move aims to restore investor confidence and attract foreign investment, following a sharp decline in the use of cash in China in favor of payment apps. In Arizona, Biden's handling of immigration fuels frustration among key voters. Washington Post. Young Democratic voters in Arizona are expressing their frustration with President Biden's hardline stance on immigration, with some saying it makes them feel disillusioned and distrustful. The president's strict policies on migration enforcement, including the use of Title 42 to expel migrants, has left many younger voters feeling as though he has abandoned his campaign promise to overhaul the immigration system. Many voters said it felt unclear what message, if any, Biden or the party had on the issue, and most said Biden's handling of immigration further reinforces their lack of enthusiasm about a potential second Biden term. Immigration has long been a fraught issue for both parties, especially in election years. Republicans have slammed Biden on his handling of the high numbers of migrant crossings since the start of the administration and have ramped up attacks in recent months. The issue has also become increasingly divisive for the Democratic Party as the president tries to prove he has been an effective leader, capable of addressing acute challenges, such as the fallout from large numbers of migrants coming that has overwhelmed cities across the country. Russia's economy faces death by 1,000 cuts. Telegraph. Russia's economy grew by 3.6% last year, far faster than most countries in Europe. This year, it is likely to grow by around 3%. The article states that the West's policy stance, aimed at putting economic pressure on Russia, has not worked. The embargo on Russian exports to the West has failed as it is relatively easy for Russia to divert its oil and gas to other markets, China in particular. In addition, the embargo on financial dealings with Russia has not had the desired effect as Russia has reduced its financial dependence on the West and increased its use of the Chinese system for international payments. There has been no major impact on Russia's productive capacity, and the damage to its supply capacity from the loss of Western technology and key supplies is likely to increase over time. The article concludes by highlighting that Russia's immediate economic outlook is fragile and that the big vulnerability for the country is energy prices. If they were to fall sharply, then the economy would come under further pressure. What was and was not true when Donald Trump blasted California, Gavin Newsom at CPAC. Yahoo! Former President Donald Trump, in a lengthy and falsehood-riddled speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference, spent some of his parting words chastising California Governor Gavin Newsom. Trump, speaking at the annual gathering of conservatives Saturday, said that he wished Newsom, a Democrat, was running for president against him in 2024. A lot of people think Gavin Newsom is going to run. In a certain way, I hope so, Trump said. I hope so. Because he's destroyed California. Kitchen boss sentenced after people lost thousands. BBC. Sonny Shacklock, the director of Sauna Kitchens Ltd in Belper, Derbyshire, has been given a suspended sentence after leaving customers thousands of pounds out of pocket. Shacklock was investigated following complaints to trading standards officers, with customers claiming that work they had paid for was either only partially completed or not done at all. Shacklock pleaded guilty to 10 charges and was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment, suspended for 18 months. He was also ordered to complete 150 hours of unpaid work, pay a victim surcharge of £156, and disqualified from acting as a company director for 5 years. Donald Trump wins South Carolina, swamping Nikki Haley in her home state. South China Morning Post. Donald Trump easily defeated Nikki Haley in South Carolina's Republican contest on Saturday, Edison Research projected, extending his winning streak as he marches towards a third consecutive presidential nomination and a rematch with Democratic President Joe Biden. G7 leaders pledge to sustain Ukraine aid in call with Zelensky. Bloomberg. President Joe Biden and leaders from the Group of Seven, G7, assured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky of their support as Russia's war against Ukraine enters its third year. The leaders held a video conference and pledged to support Ukraine, calling on Russia to withdraw its military forces from the country and pledging not to recognize any elections held by Russia in occupied territories. The G7 also plans to impose fresh sanctions on Russia and intensify efforts to enforce a price cap on Russian oil. Ukraine's allies are increasing their military assistance, but there are concerns about sustained commitment as the war continues. Why Canada's consensus on immigration is fraying. The Toronto Star. Canada's Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, has announced that he intends to reduce migration numbers as part of his upcoming platform. Recent public opinion polls suggest that anti-immigration sentiment is on the rise in Canada, with almost half of respondents stating that their community requires fewer immigrants. A year ago, support for immigration was at an all-time high. The increasing negative sentiment is being blamed on the Liberal government, who have overseen a sharp rise in non-permanent residents over the past 2 years. In response to the shift in sentiment, Immigration Minister Mark Miller has highlighted the economic benefits that immigrants bring to Canada, arguing that they are key to supporting the country's aging population. However, Miller admits that the government must do a better job of planning for immigration-related growth. The opposition Conservative Party has accused Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of opening the country's floodgates to immigrants without considering the country's housing and employment needs. Chinese migrant to U.S. seeks religious asylum with visas out of reach. Nikkei Asia. Increasing numbers of Chinese migrants are crossing the U.S. border with Mexico and applying for asylum. Economic struggles are driving some to seek asylum on religious grounds, as they are unable to live and work legally in the U.S. The number of Chinese migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border without authorization reached nearly 40,000 last year. Other migrants cited religious freedom as a reason for fleeing China. The backlog of asylum cases in U.S. immigration courts grew by around 30% to over 1 million cases by September 2023. Non-Canadian citizens in BC wait over 2 years for U.S. visitor visa interview. CBC. The U.S. Consulate General in Vancouver is experiencing a record number of applications for U.S. visitor visas, with wait times for non-Canadian citizens to secure an interview currently standing at 832 days. The situation is similar across Canada, but the longest wait time is in Calgary, where people have to wait 892 days for an interview. Due to the long wait times, some people have taken to selling earlier appointments online, although the Vancouver Consulate has warned against such scams. Last year, the Vancouver Consulate General issued 66,000 visitor visas, a 54% increase from the previous year. Nancy Mace lets loose on Kevin McCarthy, abortion, and Trump. Yahoo! Representative Nancy Mace claims she doesn't seek out the spotlight. But it certainly keeps finding her, whether by standing up to Donald Trump after January 6, helping overthrow Speaker Kevin McCarthy, or warning Republicans that they're getting the politics wrong on abortion. Well, my fellow Sixers. It's your favorite resident observer, the Sixth Doctor, here to bring you the latest news from around the world. And let me tell you, we've got quite the mix of stories today. From immigrant underemployment in Canada to political controversies surrounding a tragic murder, it seems like there's never a dull moment in the news. First up, we have Claudia Hepburn, the CEO of Windmill Microlending, calling out Canada for its failure to fully utilize the skills of highly educated immigrants. And she's right. It's a national disgrace to have engineers and physicians driving Ubers instead of practicing their professions. But fear not, my friends, because Hepburn has some suggestions to address this issue, including providing affordable loans for immigrants to cover reaccreditation expenses. Let's hope Canada takes her advice and gives these talented individuals the opportunities they deserve. Moving on, we have a heartbreaking story of a murdered nursing student in Georgia, which some Republicans are shamelessly using to push for stricter immigration laws. It's truly despicable how politicians can exploit a tragedy for their own agenda. Let's remember to respect the privacy of the victim's family during this difficult time and not let politics overshadow the loss of a young life. Now, let's talk about the UK's plan to deport foreign criminals in order to free up prison space. It's an interesting approach, but will it actually work? Criminals who launch legal challenges against deportation could prove to be a major obstacle. So, while it's a step in the right direction, it remains to be seen how effective this strategy will be. In other news, the CEO of Ford is demanding a resolution to an investigation into alleged inappropriate behavior by Red Bull's team principal. Talk about drama in the racing world. It seems like even the fast-paced world of Formula One is not immune to controversy. Ford's CEO wants a fair and just resolution, and who can blame him? After all, nobody likes a scandal hanging over their heads, especially when you're about to become someone's engine supplier. Shifting gears to China, the State Council has approved measures to make payment apps easier for foreigners to use. It's about time. China's strict foreign exchange controls have made it difficult for foreigners to use payment services. But now, with these new measures, things might get a little easier. It's a win for foreigners and a win for China's economy, which is increasingly relying on payment apps. Speaking of international relations, President Biden and the leaders of the G7 have pledged their support to Ukraine in its ongoing conflict with Russia. It's a tense situation that has been going on for years, and it's crucial for Ukraine to have the backing of its allies. Let's hope that these pledges of support lead to a peaceful resolution and an end to the violence. Now, let's talk about the fraying consensus on immigration in Canada. It seems that anti-immigration sentiment is on the rise, with more and more people feeling that their communities require fewer immigrants. The Liberal government is being blamed for this shift in sentiment, but Immigration Minister Mark Miller argues that immigrants bring economic benefits. It's a complex issue, but one thing is clear: Canada needs to do a better job of planning for immigration-related growth and addressing the concerns of its citizens. Finally, we have the story of Chinese migrants seeking religious asylum in the U.S. Economic struggles and a lack of legal work opportunities have driven some Chinese migrants to seek asylum on religious grounds. It's a sad reality that so many people feel forced to leave their homes in search of a better life. The U.S. immigration system is overwhelmed with a backlog of asylum cases, and it's a humanitarian crisis that needs urgent attention. Well, my dear Sixers, that wraps up today's news. We've covered a wide range of topics, from immigration to politics to international relations. Now, it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions for the Sixth Doctor? Let's keep the conversation going and see what ideas you have to share. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the Sixth Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of Sixth Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.